Zeno from Citium. Before becoming a philosopher, Zeno was a merchant. Once he experienced a shipwreck and lost all his wealth. He arrived in Athens as a very poor man. However, his fate changed when Zeno turned his attention to philosophy. He was fascinated by interesting ideas, so he actively studied philosophy with various teachers. Then he was able to create his own philosophical school in Athens, called Stoicism. Those who practice this philosophy are called Stoics. Zenon's teaching is characterized by a primary focus on establishing the inner independence of the individual. According to Zenon, the world is governed by a certain force, fate, but the world itself is a living whole, permeated with cosmic breath. He also believed that in human behavior, the primary thing is the movement of the soul, determining the reasons for individual human actions. Zenon lived to a very old age, and according to legend, he died by purposely holding his breath. In other words, ending his life by suicide. Stoic ethics considered this acceptable if it was deemed reasonable. Cleanthes. In his youth, Cleanthes was a boxer. Once he came to study with Zeno in Athens with only 4 drachmas, which he paid for the right to attend lectures, and at night, he carried water and kneaded flour. After Zenon's death, Cleanthes became the head of the Stoic school of philosophy. Among his many writings, a large text called Hymn to Zeus is preserved. In this work, the universe is depicted as one big living being, whose soul is God, and the heart is the sun. Cleanthes is credited with translating Seneca's expression into Latin. Fate leads the willing and drags along the unwilling. According to legend, Cleanthes, following the extreme principles of Stoicism, starved himself to death at the age of 100. Chrysippus from Seoul. Chrysippus was a runner and athlete, but in his younger years he came to Athens and started attending lectures by Cleanthes. After Cleanthes passed away, Chrysippus took over the school. He is credited with giving final shape to early Stoicism. His work focused on formalizing and developing Stoic ethics and logic. He had an incredible breadth of interests and productivity, writing up to 500 lines a day. Chrysippus, a renowned Stoic, stood out for his dialectic skills. For the systematic coherence and logic of his philosophical constructs, he was comparable only to Aristotle in the ancient world, and in logic, he even surpassed him. Chrysippus developed the doctrine of the periodic destruction and rebirth of the world by the deity. In Ethics, Chrysippus asserted the unity of the soul and, unlike Zeno of Citium, saw passions not as consequences of mistaken judgments, but as the mistaken judgments themselves. He was also a proponent of living in harmony with nature. Chrysippus was the first to use the term instinct to describe the behavior of birds and other animals. According to one version, Chrysippus died from a fit of laughter. He saw his donkey eat his figs, then he shouted to an old woman that now they should give the donkey some pure wine to wash down its throat. Then he burst out laughing and died. This wise man lived for 73 years. Epictetus. Epictetus was a slave of Epaphroditus in Rome. Epaphroditus served as a secretary to the dramatic emperor Nero. Epaphroditus, accompanied by his slave Epictetus, attended lectures by the famous Stoic Musunius Rufus, whom I'll talk about later in the video. It's likely that it was in these lectures that Epictetus was inspired by Stoic ideas. Once, when his master was angry and began beating him, Epictetus calmly said, "You will break my leg." When Epaphroditus did indeed break his leg, Epictetus coolly added, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" Epaphroditus was amazed by his slave's patience and felt ashamed of his own cruelty, while Epictetus remained lame for life. It's unclear when, but Epictetus gained his freedom, which allowed him to found his own philosophical school. Epictetus preached Stoic ideas. His philosophy aimed to teach us to distinguish what is within our control and what is not. We cannot control everything outside us. Only our thoughts and desires, and therefore our happiness, are under our control. His teaching also emphasized ethics, self-analysis, and acceptance of fate. His famous brief manual for ethical living called the Enchiridion is a key text of Stoicism. Epictetus died in old age in the mid-2nd century. On Epictetus's grave was inscribed the epitaph, "Epictetus the slave, lame and poor, friend of the immortals." Seneca, Lucius Aeneas. Seneca was a Roman philosopher, politician, and writer. He is known for his essays and treatises in which he discusses many aspects of Stoic philosophy, including ethics, the nature of fate, and inner peace. His life was full of contradictions. On one hand, he served as an advisor to the scandalous Emperor Nero, and on the other, he pursued the ideals of wisdom, justice, and self-reflection. His essays and letters, filled with wise advice and philosophical reflections, still inspire people and help them find a path to inner tranquility in the chaos of the modern world. During the youth of Emperor Nero, Seneca was effectively the ruler of Rome, but later he was pushed aside from power when he refused to sanction repressions against Nero's opponents and against Christians. As a Stoic, Seneca emphasized the unity of all things, but he believed in the possibility of unlimited human knowledge. Unlike classical Stoicism, Seneca's philosophy has a clear religious element, and his thoughts aligned so closely with Christianity that he was considered a secret Christian and was credited with correspondence with the Apostle Paul. Seneca ended his life by suicide at the order of Nero, to avoid execution. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was a great emperor, philosopher, and symbol of ancient Roman wisdom. While he fought for the well-being of the Roman Empire on the political stage, his mind was immersed in the depths of Stoic philosophy. His meditations, written by him, represent a sincere internal dialogue he has with himself, a source of eternal wisdom and moral perfection. In these writings, we find not only guidance on proper behavior, but also profound reflections on the meaning of life, the nature of humanity, and its relationship with the world. Marcus Aurelius was not without problems and trials. He became emperor in one of the most challenging times for Rome, and his reign was accompanied by many difficulties. Moreover, Aurelius faced heavy losses in his family. One of the most painful losses was the death of his wife. His children died at a young age, bringing him much sorrow and grief. Marcus Aurelius understood that life is full of changes and uncertainties, and that true wisdom lies in the ability to maintain inner balance and justice in the face of the trials we encounter. Marcus Aurelius is often counted among the so-called 5 good emperors, who ruled the Roman Empire from 96 to 180 AD. This period is often described as the Golden Age of Rome. Despite poor health, Marcus Aurelius often found himself among his troops, immersing himself in the military environment. This gave him incredible authority among Roman soldiers and officers. Therefore, Marcus Aurelius met his death during a military campaign against the Quadi and Marcomanni. His death marked the end of the era of the 5 good emperors, and the beginning of a period of political instability in the Roman Empire, known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Musunius Rufus. Musunius Rufus was known for his passion for philosophy and dedication to its ideals. He was a teacher of Epictetus, and famous for his essays on ethics and the philosophy of life. Musonius' views are largely similar to Epictetus's philosophy, but with a more pragmatic and socially oriented approach. The central belief in his ethics is that all people have the potential for living virtuously. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Musunius Rufus advocated for equality between men and women. He argued that education and wisdom should not be dependent on gender. Both men and women can achieve high standards of virtue. Musonius's philosophy had a strong influence on late antique and Christian authors. Athenodorus Cananites. Athenodorus Cananites was a Stoic philosopher. He was born in Canania near Tarsus. Athenodorus was a teacher of the great emperor Octavian Augustus. He wrote interesting philosophical works, highly praised by his contemporaries, but unfortunately none have survived. It is known that Athenodorus assisted Cicero in writing the political treatise On Duties, and it is also speculated that this work influenced Seneca and the Apostle Paul. Once, Athenodorus rented a cheap house in Athens. He was satisfied with the new home for its low rent. Late at night, while Athenodorus was writing a philosophical essay, a ghost wrapped in chains appeared to him and beckoned him to follow. The spirit led him to the courtyard, where it suddenly disappeared. Athenodorus marked the spot and the next day obtained permission to dig. They found the skeleton of an old man, bound in chains. After burying the skeleton, the ghost never appeared in the house again. Researchers believe that the writer Oscar Wilde wrote The Canterville Ghost, inspired by Athenodorus's story. Athenodorus Cananites led a modest life, striving for inner perfection and harmony with nature. He preferred spiritual riches over material wealth, and his example inspired others to seek truth and virtue. Perhaps that's why after Athenodorus's death, annual festivals were held in his honor in Tarsus. Actually, there were many more Stoic philosophers who brought beautiful ideas about wisdom and spiritual development into our world. So, feel free to write in the comments about any of them. Thank you for your attention to this video. See you soon.